So Kyle, with 287 being right around the corner, give me your thoughts on what the event's going to be like.
Oh, I think it's going to be a great weekend for UFC 287. This is the first time that we have a UFC card in Miami in 20 years. And these two top fights in the main card are going to be something to watch for sure. We've got Israel Adesanya trying to reclaim the middleweight belt against Alex Pereira. And then we've got Gilbert Burns and Jorge Masvidal in the co-main event. This is going to be a wild main card going into this weekend. When I look at the Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya fight, I'll start there since that's the championship belt fight. This is going to be a very interesting fight the way that I see this one playing out. Looking back at the last fight between these two, Alex Pereira got a huge fifth round knockout against Izzy, and that was despite the fact that Israel Adesanya was up 3 rounds to 1 going into that fifth round. And when I look at the differences with this fight that I'm expecting compared to the last fight that these two had, I think Izzy's going to be the one trying to establish pace in this fight. Because when I look back at that last fight between these two, even though the Israel Adesanya was winning the rounds by and large, you could tell that Alex Pereira was the one walking down Izzy. He was the one closing space against Izzy. And that was despite the fact that even though that from a physical perspective, Alex Pereira is much bigger and probably a little bit stronger than Israel Adesanya. The fact that Izzy was still being able to be up 3-1 in those early 4 rounds, before the fifth, that was huge for him. But Alex Pereira really came on strong in that fifth round and was able to get some really good hits on Izzy. Got a couple hooks in there, had Izzy in trouble against the cage, and then Mark Goddard stopped the fight, and Alex Pereira is your middleweight champ. With this fight, it's very interesting looking at just the physical differences between Pereira and Izzy, just because Izzy is more skinny. Don't get me wrong, he's strong, but you compare him to Alex Pereira looks like a light heavyweight. I don't know how he gets down to 185 for that weight cut, because it's absolutely insane just at the physical stature when you compare Alex Pereira to Israel Adesanya. It's going to be difficult for me to believe that Izzy's going to be the one to establish pace and try to close the distance against Alex Pereira, simply just because Alex is just an intimidating guy from a physical perspective. And Alex has a bunch of power, not just in his punches. His background is in kickboxing. And looking back at that first fight, these guys were just throwing kicks left and right in every single round. And that's going to be a focal piece of this fight for sure. I think to me, it's going to come down to who's going to be able to outstrike the other opponent outside of the kickboxing, because the kickboxing is going to be the focal point of the fight. But we saw that Alex Pereira was the one to be able to close the gap, close the distance against Israel. And he was the one to really get shots on Izzy to end up winning the fight. Izzy did get that one punch at the end of the first round, but didn't have enough time to be able to get the fight in his favor against Alex in that first round. It just ran out of time. So if I had to look at this fight, if I had to pick who I think is going to win this fight, this is a very tough fight for me to pick. I'm going to favor Alex Pereira simply just because when I look back to that first fight, from a physical perspective, he seems a little bit more dominating than Izzy. He was able to effectively close distance against Izzy throughout most of that fight. And I think the game plan is establish that same type of methods in the cage. If he's able to walk Izzy down, get Izzy into a position where he's up on the cage, there's a good chance that I think that Alex can land some good shots. And I'm not saying get a knockout where Izzy's flatlined, but where the referee's going to have to come in and potentially call it. So it's either that or this is going to go to a decision. And honestly, if this goes to a decision, this is a toss-up. So, I think more times than not, I'm going to bet on Alex Pereira winning this fight. I still think that Israel Adesanya can get the middleweight belt back and reclaim being the middleweight champ. But I'm just going to favor Alex Pereira a little bit more in this fight over Izzy. But I could still see Izzy winning this fight.